Kyle Smith. He is a law director. We have
Ellie
Heinonen. She is a law director. And also I was going to say Kylie for Kyle. And then we have Martha Sorohan. She is not a law director.
No, hardly.
Okay. So I can remember back, God, it's the 80s, and you were elected law director, correct?
Yes. In fact, my first day on the job in 1984, you did the interview.
Really?
For the News Herald. Yes, I still have it. I looked for it today and I couldn't find it. But there was a picture where I had less gray and you had more hair.
Yeah, that's true. And how old were you then?
I wasn't even born yet.
Does she have to be here?
Yes.
Who did you replace?
Stephanie Malbesa was the elected law director in it was the election of 1983. She served for a period of about 6 months.
And then she quit.
And then she quit. So I was approached and I took the appointment.
And then you were elected.
I was elected twice. And then the charter took over in 1991 and I became the appointed law director.
So how's it different being law director appointed and a law director being elected?
The law director appointed with the charter from a government is very good. I can't imagine a better system of government. It has its issues, it has its problems,
right.
But you have a city manager that is trained in municipal law, and you just can't underestimate that. Someone that, you start looking at the city of Conneaut, and it has a $13 million budget. It has 80 full-time employees, 20 part-time employees. It's got 4 labor contracts. It's under a slew of federal, state, county, and local laws and regulations. And it really helps to have somebody in that top chair that has some knowledge and experience with that stuff. It makes it a lot easier.
Every once in a while, a city manager quits, and there were a couple of them, and every time that happens, somebody would say, we ought to go back to a mayor where we have a local guy, and we don't have as much controversy. And I would say, are you kidding? Do you remember those days? What planet are you from?
And in fairness, there have been good mayors in the past, and I think that the water still ran, the toilet still flushed,
right?
Everything still worked. But I think having that extra experience with the city manager under a unified city government, I think, is really an advantage to the city, in particular because the city is in competition so much with other municipalities and other counties and other states for economic development. And so we have to present a government here that knows what it's doing and is able to respond quickly and with accuracy and with effectiveness.
And Mr. Hawkins is not here, the new city manager, but he's been really kind of thrown into it with positions that need to be filled and bridges that collapse. You remember Mike Royko? He was a columnist.
Yes.
He wrote it because Jesse Jackson was going to announced he was thinking about running for mayor of Chicago. And Royko wrote a column that says, he's never going to run for mayor of Chicago because you know what mayors do? You know what local officials do? They take care of problems with garbage and when trash trucks break down and when there's sewer leaks. He's not going to want to be monkeying around with this kind of stuff. He's just never going to run that because that's what it's not a glamorous job. When something happens with, money's needed for something.
It's just an increasingly challenging world out there in terms of local government. The competition for economic development is intense,
right?
And it's a competitive system, and you either compete with it or you don't. And I think we're in a good position right now with Jim as the city manager, with John Williams as the finance officer, and with a really good city council. I think we're in a position where we can make some strides and gain back some of the competitiveness that we haven't had for a while.
do you see some economic development coming? I know you're the law director, but as part of the city government, I know that was something that he was going to try to do, is maybe get more things going here.
Yes, I think he will. I mean, right now it's the little Dutch boy
Oh,
put
yeah.
the fingers in all the holes in the dam, and there's a lot of ones that keep popping up every day. But I think that's what Jim's forte is grants, putting together projects, infrastructure projects, putting together economic development things. I think he's very good at that. And if you look at what Conneaut has to offer, I do a lot of traveling on Lake Erie. As you know, I sail.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm also the solicitor at Geneva on the Lake. And Geneva on the Lake has a lot of its own strengths as well. But Conneaut has an incredible township park. It's got an incredible beach. And it's got an incredible harbor area. And it's got one of the cleanest, most pristine rivers
Right.
in Northeast Ohio.
It's behind my house. So
Yeah, it's behind our house too, and we've got the ingredients. We need the leadership. We need to get the little ducks in a row, and I think we can really make some inroads.
It's just going to take a little time, and we need to get that public works director appointed and
Yeah.
things like that. So, Allie, tell us about your background. You were born like in 2000. And
89,
Rolling Stone Steel Wheel, dude. You were. That was
80s.
What month?
early April.
Oh, okay. So you could have gone to the Rolling Stone Steel Wheels tour in Cleveland. That was in August.
I missed out.
Oh.
Yeah, and I went to Southeast Elementary when that was still around.
Oh, back in the
Rao
days.
Middle School, I think I was one of the last classes to go through Rao.
Was my wife your teacher?
Yes, actually.
How about
yes.
that?
Yeah, yes, she taught math.
Yes.
Right, yep. I think 6th or 7th grade math.
7th grade.
Yeah. And then I graduated from Conneaut in 2007. Then I went, for undergrad, I went to John Carroll up towards Cleveland.
Right.
And then I majored in communications and sociology there. I really, at that point, had no intention of going to law school. My roommate was taking the LSAT. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do that too. Why not? And I did, and I did well. And then so I started applying to law schools. I got into Toledo. So that's where I went to law school, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, some people
Really?
say law school is like a horror story. I had a great time. It was challenging, but I really enjoyed it.
It wasn't like The Paper Chase. You see that series?
No, and he keeps telling me to watch that movie, and that's one that I haven't
It's a
watched.
movie, and then it was.
You never watched any of the movies I tell you to watch.
I watched My Cousin Vinny. I got that one.
Oh, that is a good movie. What Ute? What's a Ute?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about Casablanca. Come on.
Don't think I've watched it.
How many times I've seen bought Casablanca on tape and then
Yeah.
disc and then high def disc. But anyway, that is totally relevant to our discussion.
It's Friday.
But Paper Chase was a movie and then it was a series.
Oh, okay.
And first it was on CBS and it was canceled after a year. It was an excellent series, but they said it was too good for TV. So Showtime picked it up and had it for a couple of years. But it was like, it did make law school seem like a horror story. People didn't sleep for 3 days. And
During
because-
final exams, it would
Yeah.
get like that a little bit, and then the bar exam, that was like a whole nother animal. But, well, the first semester is kind of scary. I think they do that on purpose. They'll like cold call on you, so if you're just sitting there in class, they're like, you over there, what's the answer to this? And you're like, but I mean, it's good. That's why I think they do, because they're preparing you for what you're going to run into
Right.
when you start practicing. But after you kind of get over that first semester, you figure out, what they expect of you, and I really enjoyed it. And Toledo's a great school. I mean, the teachers there are incredible, absolutely incredible. So, and then I'm here.
So is that you went from here? Okay, so you were with Kyle's law firm in Jefferson. Is that where you
Yes.
started, or?
Yeah, I started the first summer out of law school. So, and then I came back every summer after that, and I was kind of like paralegal, research assistant. I'd follow him around in court and kind of shadow. And then once I was sworn in last November, I was able to kind of start taking on my own cases, and slowly but surely, started to form kind of my own practice over there. And then the opportunity presented itself in Conneaut, so now we're here as well.
I would mention that Jim Hockaday, the city manager, when he wants to talk about something, he calls you on a Friday afternoon. at 4:30 when the work week's over.
I've gotten Saturday calls from Jim. Okay.
But that's where one of them was to talk about why he appointed you two and kind of sharing the duties. So can you kind of explain how that all came about?
Well, I guess you could start with your duties.
Whose idea was it, or did he come to you? Did he come to you and say, "Would you like to come back to Conneaut?" I mean, he worked with you in Geneva on the Lake, right? And,
Jim?
yeah.
Yes. Jim and I worked for 5.5 years or so at Geneva on the Lake. So we had a good working relationship.
So did he call you up and say, "Can you come back to Conneaut?" And you said, "I don't want to do it all myself, so let me see if I can find some sap that will come with me."
I was eager, like,
I'll do it.
An eager sap. Yeah, so something like that. And I guess the thing that motivated me for it was I've lived here for 30 years.
Right.
So I've got skin in the game here. I'm interested in how the community is doing and how it's developing. And I see a great opportunity with Jim coming in as the city manager right now. I knew that I couldn't handle this all myself, and I didn't want to handle it all by myself.
Because you still have the other.
I have other municipalities. I've got a private office, and Allie was the perfect choice for that. She's young, she's aggressive, she's bright, she's a lot nicer than I am, and so she's a good.
She wanted to Indian wrestle when she first got here, so you're right. She's aggressive.
No, she's tough. She's tough. She's tough. But what I handle is I handle the civil issues and the day-to-day things that come up with personnel or contracts or personnel issues, economic development things, things where there may be liability or risk associated with an activity or something along those lines. Allie is pretty much doing the criminal enforcement, which is where I started off when I started doing this with the city of Ashtabula when I was a little older, I think, than you were at the time. But she's handling the code enforcement stuff. I've got commitments on Monday nights, so Allie's been going to the council meetings and been handling that very nicely. And so it's kind of a shared responsibility in that regard, and we help each other. We're all on the same team.
Right.
And I think that's pretty much how it works.
Is the law director's office manned most of the time then?
We try
by
to.
one of you two? Or?
Yes. There's very few times where one of us isn't in the office or in the building.
That'd be nice too if one of you goes on vacation. Or...
Right, exactly. I think it's really, I don't know how one person would have been able to do it on their own. I mean, it's a lot of work, and I think it is good having two people. If something comes up where they need something, one of us is bound to be around. I mean, like you said, we both live here, so that worked out really well too.
And one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to be more proactive.
Stop it before it becomes a problem.
Nipping it in the bud. As opposed to letting it blow into a full-grown problem and then having to react to it. We're trying to intervene early, trying to identify issues as they come up and find resolutions for them while it's still easy to do that.
I can remember when I was first starting, back before Allie was born, and but there was a lot.
I forget. Did we have electricity back then?
Black
and white TVs, right?
Pump the well. You'd have to ride a bike to get enough power to generate to watch I Love Lucy in black and white. But there was one law director, and he was part-time. They usually had a law office, and so I mean things have changed. Things have gotten a lot more complicated over the years.
Right.
Yes.
It would be very difficult, I think, for one person to handle all that.
So tell me, give me a couple examples of how things are different from way back when.
Well, some things aren't different.
That's another thing I was going to ask you about. You sit back down in the office 20 years later, and it's like you never left.
I think the same
I think
pictures
it's the
are
same
hanging
carpet,
out.
yeah. That same picture of the cows and the pond. Still there, yeah. One of the things that's changed, and we see it in the police reports, is the amount of heroin that's coming into the city. And for me to have, 20 some odd years ago, to have 4 or 5 search warrants in a year was pretty good. we've had probably a half a dozen just in
Already.
the last 4 months, and every one of them has been heroin and or
meth,
methamphetamines. And that's the staggering thing. And if I can deviate for that for just a second, the police in our community are underrated, underfunded, and overworked. As you may know, we have a 3 mil levy on the ballot
That's
in
right.
November.
Yeah.
That's a new levy. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a new tax, but we've got to do something to help our police department. It is so critical. And these guys work hard. They do their job. I think they can do their job a lot better and make a bigger dent in this problem if they had more manpower. Right now, I think the number of police officers is actually less than when I left 20 years ago.
I'm sure it is.
We've got much more problems. Plus, we have a prison now in the city
Right.
that can create its own host of problems. Then additionally, I think, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, they laid off the jailers. So we still have the jail facility, we still use it, but now the police officers have to go in there and they have to feed the prisoners, they have to clean up after them, they have to do the linen, they have to do the laundry, and it's incredible. And I think it's doing a real disservice to them and to the police department, but there just isn't enough money the way it is right now. And
But actually, it's not really efficient either because you're paying a police officer's wages
Oh,
to
absolutely.
do the laundry or
Absolutely.
whatever.
Right.
So, and don't quote me on this, but I think,
Don't quote him now.
all right,
It's just you and me here.
all right, I'm never that good with numbers. There's people all over the county that understand that.
We can call my wife.
They can do that. But I think the tax will generate about $500,000, and that's going to allow us to hire more police officers, and it's going to help us to hire more jailers. Corrections, thank you. Corrections officers, that's the word for it. And that's so important because it gives them the ability to beef up their patrols and to be doing the stuff that you want the police department to do. And right now, I see us really kind of on the edge in some parts of the town with some of these houses that are manufacturing the meth and dealing the heroin and that type of thing. We really need to attack this. I mean, this is the very soul, the very essence of our community at stake here. And I think this levy will go a long ways toward helping that and giving the police the tools they need to handle the problem.
This is very similar to the levy in Ashtabula that passed a year or so ago, I believe.
Could be, I don't.
I mean, they had officers that were doing the jailers' work and all that sort of stuff, and they have been. I think they recently hired some new officers.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is a problem everywhere, and everywhere they've cut back. You're talking about fewer police officers. I imagine the Public Works Department that
Sure.
is way lower than it was, and they're expected to. That's you hear criticisms about the city and plowing and stuff, but there's like 9 people, and I get up in the morning. I live way out in nowhere, and the road's plowed. So.
Well, one of the ways too, we have to remember this. The city is doing without almost half of its, I forgot the word for it now, its revenue sharing from the state.
Oh yeah.
And there's a word for it, and I can't think of what it is now.
That's how they balanced the
But,
budget.
yeah, that's how
The
they
state-
balanced-
the state budget.
Yeah.
We didn't raise taxes at all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
We're going to
messed
put
up-
that burden back on the local communities.
Yeah, they can go and ask
Yeah.
for more money.
Exactly. It's like a revenue sharing, but that's not the word for it.
No, but revenue. It's a kind of state version of
It's the local government fund.
right.
Thank
That's
you.
right.
Yeah.
And when the state income tax was passed, like in the early 70s, the promise was that a lot of this money would go to your local governments, and they kept that promise for a while until they got running for president, got into office, and
Yes,
took it
we're
away.
running short at least $300,000. I think it's more than that. A year deficit, or from what we once got from the state
Sure.
for this. And actually, that was originally set up to be part of our share of the sales tax. It was going to come. They had promised to give us back part of that into the county, and then it got
Right.
distributed out. And we've actually lost half of that.
Roger Corlett was on earlier this week, the county auditor, and we were talking about that and what happened in like 2008 when you were born. You were
I was a freshman in college.
freshman in college, yes. And well, this stuff's called beer. Anyway. And what that happened then to the county government, and every libraries has to go ask for money, and
Sure. And the federal government's doing it, the state government's doing it, telling the local, the local people, you want this, you pay for it. You take care of it.
And I don't know if it was during the Reagan administration. You're talking about revenue sharing. There was revenue sharing. It started by Nixon,
Yes.
and it ended with Reagan. That was money that the federal government gave back to the
Huge
locals.
amounts.
Yeah. Then all of a sudden, 1 year.
Yeah.
We think there should be local control of communities. Translated. Come up with your own money.
Well, and that's what we have to do. It's sink or swim.
Okay, we will be back. We're going to talk more about local government and the law director's office, and some questions that I get every once in a while, and see if you guys can answer them. It's not like trivia questions like, what's the capital of North Dakota?
I know. Bismarck.
There we go. We'll
Or
be
is that
back.
here?
You can look it up.
No,
Google
Bismarck is
Google
North
it.
Dakota, pure South Dakota.
All right.
That I know.
Allie Heinonen is here. Are you assistant law director?
Yes, I'm the
okay,
assistant.
and Kyle is the law director.
Yes.
And you've been here since what, like July or
June 1st.
June
June
1st.
1st.
Yeah.
So what was your perception of the job when you decided you'd take it, and how's it different?
Actually, I was able to.
I hope the Rolling Stones don't give us a copyright. Will you guys represent me?
Conflict of interest.
Well, I'm getting a phone call on my phones that are in there, but it's connected to my iPad.
So what happened?
Sorry.
It'll just stop. It's just the ringtone.
Oh, that's the ringtone?
You
Oh, there we go.
can't turn it off.
Okay.
Huh?
Yeah,
There you go.
That's good.
it's a good song though.
Well, I was able to shadow Luke Gallagher a couple times and kind of get a feel for things. And I had actually, before we took this job, I was doing criminal defense, so I had come to Conneaut a few times and
So where were you working?
through Kyle's office.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah,
I see.
so I was getting like court-appointed cases, and I had a handful out here, so I kind of had an understanding of what was going to go on. I guess what I didn't realize though is the caseload in any given day. I mean, on a Monday, like Public Defender Day, when we have one of the public defenders out here, there's probably at least like a dozen cases that they have set in one day, and it's difficult trying to truck through all of
Right.
them and keep them on time. And then you got people that don't show up, or they come late,
Yeah.
or they come early, or don't come. I mean, that's, I guess, the part that surprised me is just how much I have to get through in any given day.
When this was a few months ago, there was some case. It was the I'm not gonna call him a jerk that killed the dog, and so he's supposed to have a court hearing, and he doesn't show up, and the judge says, he's a criminal. They don't follow the law. Why would they show up to court?
That must have been before us. I don't
That was
remember.
Tom Harris.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. No.
But then that's true.
Just get a warrant out for him, and they'll find him eventually.
Yeah. Well, somebody later gave a tip to the police department. He's at his house. Got him.
Conneaut's a small town. You can't
Yeah.
escape for very long. Yeah.
Where did I saw you at initial hearing for something? You were there with Luke.
Oh, I think it was probably the preliminary hearing for that murder that. What was his name? It slipped my mind.
Oh, yeah, over on Benjamin Street.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, that's right.
That'd be
That's
Jeff
what it would be.
Ryan.
Yes,
Jeff Ryan.
right. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, that was that was the first day I think that I was shadowing Luke, and then I had like one or two other times that I went along with him, and then we started June 1st.
Okay.
Mhm.
So it's just the volume of stuff.
Yeah. Yes, that's definitely the volume. But I like it. I like being busy like that. I like having kind of a fast-paced environment. It's just getting yourself organized. I usually on a Sunday before, when I know there's like a dozen cases, I come in, I try to look through everything, get them all organized, just so that I can kind of keep on pace, because there's a lot. I mean, you have to get through it. You have to.
But there's a lot of similar stories, I take it.
Yeah, now that I've been here for a couple months, it's getting a little easier. It is a lot of, unfortunately, the same people too.
I was about to say.
It's always the
I mean,
same
it's sad. You do see the same people kind of over and over again. You're like, okay, you know, what can we do? That we try to. I mean, we try to help them out as best as we can. I mean, the public defenders that come in, they're great. Judge has been great about it. We try to, get the best resolution for these people that kind of continuously are before the court, and I think the court's been doing a really good job at that. Really good job.
See, Judge DeFranco's doing a pretty good job. From what I've seen.
Yeah, he's doing great. He's very reasonable. That's one of the things I would say about him. He's not going to try to hammer someone just because he usually asks them in court, what's your story? Why are you here? What kind of help do you need? And he tries to craft a sentence that will help. I mean, because sometimes just throwing someone in jail for 5 days, that's not going to really do anything. I mean, if they keep coming back and coming back, sometimes you need to order them to do treatment, or sometimes they need probation. I mean, Mike Strill is our probation officer over there.
Oh, okay.
He does a really good job. He's the only one we have over there, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure. And so anyone that gets put on probation, Mike has to handle all of that, and he does a really great job. And I think he's had some people that have really been able to turn themselves around by being put on probation. I mean, it's good for some people. It really is.
And if you go to court at all, you know that the judges, they treat these people with respect. That maybe they have to, but here's somebody that just bludgeoned somebody to death. It's okay, sir. Do you have an attorney? And or people not quite that bad that they try to make arrangements for if they are paying a fine. Okay, how much can you pay? And when can you start paying it?
Exactly. Some people they just don't have jobs to do it, and I think in a few instances I've seen where judges had people do community service around the courthouse, the court beautification program, whatever it is they call it, and they help with like the weeds or the grass and whatnot. And Mike has to supervise them doing that too. I mean, because you can't just let them kind of run about. So he's done that as well, which I think is great, because some people they can't pay the fines. I mean, and you're just setting them up for failure almost. You fine them, and then 60 days it's supposed to be paid, and it's not. Then they come back, and it's just like a vicious cycle. So there's been some times where community service has been part of the sentence, and instead of the fines or jail. I mean, whatever really is appropriate for that individual person.
How does the prison being here impact the law director's office?
I can say what I have noticed, a handful of cases we've had where people are coming to visit an inmate and they commit a theft. I've had probably at least 5 or 6 of them.
They steal from prisoners?
No, they'll steal from the gas station, they'll steal from Circle K. They're
coming here to
to visit. And I've had probably 5 or 6 cases like that. And I mean, we'll ask them, what do you do? Well, I'm visiting, my boyfriend or my husband. He's in jail, and I just, because they don't have local addresses. They're from Columbus or wherever. I'm like, well, what brought you to Conneaut? And they're coming to visit, and some of them, it's a theft normally, is what I've seen. And it's, my little things.
Right.
I mean, stealing a Red Bull from True North or whatever it is, but that's what I've seen, which I wasn't expecting, really. That's not what I would have thought.
Do you get, though, like if there's a fight at the prison and somebody's charged with assault? I've seen, like, sometimes...
I haven't had that yet.
I've seen, like, indictments where the address is the prison, so... But maybe that just goes... Maybe is it the highway patrol that handles that, maybe? So it goes directly...
That could be. It may be directly handled by the county prosecutor.
Yeah, they probably just do a direct indictment or something like that, I would imagine.
Speaking of, because I see this on, I would put something on Facebook about somebody who's a murderer, and it's one person dead, and they're charged with 3 different counts of murder and felonious assault and all this kind of stuff, and people will say, well, that was only one murder, so how come they're charged with 2 or 3 counts? So how is that done, and why?
I haven't really seen that happen.
Really?
We haven't seen that here. I mean, in the past when I handled that, oftentimes there may be a burglary involved in it. Sometimes there may be a killing involved in it. Sometimes there may be, different aspects to it.
Well, I think I've seen a few with Michael Franklin. I'm just wondering if it's Like one's they're like two different versions of murder in case one doesn't stick or something, or
Yeah, I'm not sure which one.
I can't think of any
talking
specific one
about,
right now,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
I've just seen people say that. Then the other thing people say is they ought to just kill them. They ought to just execute them. You know, that's what every time I post something like that, that's what I see. It's like, oh, this is if you don't have anything better to do than troll Facebook and put put something original in,
Right.
or make it creative. They ought to tie him to a bumper and drag him or something different. I don't know, but there aren't too many forgiving people out there sometimes, I think.
No.
People don't understand the law.
Right.
Well, and there's a lot of frustration out there.
Yeah, there is.
I mean, the legal system is slow.
Yeah.
The legal system doesn't always come out the way you expect it's going to come out. And the prisons and the jails are jam-packed. I think
They
we
are.
have the
They are.
highest per capita prison rate, I think, in the world.
Right.
And yeah, it just keeps getting worse sometimes.
What do you think about this marijuana thing, the issue 3? Would that solve problems or would it create more problems?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Well, that's kind of what I don't really have an opinion on it yet, but the law enforcement people are.
I think it
It's
would tend to create more
Probably
problems.
right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think
and
it-
just in general, it would. I've been listening to different things, and there are some interesting arguments on both sides of it. But I think that it would just end up creating more problems. I really do.
I remember years ago there were arguments is that you want somebody that's driving your bus that had been smoking marijuana just before that. And,
Well, I mean, I'm sure there'd be restrictions.
Well,
I mean, it's
right,
same as
yeah.
alcohol. I
Yeah.
mean, but,
Right, but I don't know, maybe it would be less easy to detect or something if they were smoking marijuana.
It could be. I mean, I really, I don't know. I really do. One thing though that I've seen a lot of people commenting on, like online on the articles on Facebook and Star Beacon, is as far as it being a gateway drug. I mean, I tend to agree, but I think like the painkillers and the opiates, those are a big
Yes.
gateway drug.
Yeah. Mhm.
I would almost say even more so than probably marijuana. Just my personal opinion. I've read a lot of other people that kind of tend to agree with that, and I think that's one of the bigger problems. I really do.
Well, there's an annual event that was held at Spire before, and maybe at Lakeside High School, where they have healthcare and law enforcement all getting together
Mm-hmm.
and talking about the opiates.
Yeah.
Where you fall and break your leg and you're giving some kind of a painkiller and then you get hooked on it.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then
A lot
when you
of stuff out
when you can't get it anymore, then that's when you start teetering into the heroin.
Right.
I mean, so.
So it's not probably a good idea to legalize.
Right.
Well, even if you wanted to, is the fact that you could only get it legitimately wholesale from these certain growers in certain parts of the state, and they were chosen because they were the people that put up the money to get the thing on the ballot. Now that in itself, it seems like there ought to be a law against that.
Kind of like the whole gambling thing.
Yeah.
We're going to legalize gambling, but only 5 business entities can do it. We're going to legalize pot, but only 10 organizations can do it. And even if you do legalize it, it doesn't mean that your employer can't prohibit or do drug testing
Right.
to stop
Right.
it. So it's kind of a false panacea there, and vote it down, get rid of it, and then move on to the more important things facing the state and local government.
Yeah.
It's just a distraction.
Yeah.
About the position, and I don't know how complicated it's gotten over the years and all. Do you get a lot of contact from people on the outside, people coming in? What are the,
Yes. And that's where Pam, our administrative assistant, just all around guru of the law
Uh-huh.
director's office, she's the one that's kind of initially answering the phone, taking all those calls, or when people stop up at our office. She's the first face that they see, but we do get a lot of outside people coming in that sometimes they just want to know, the status of charges, and we'll oftentimes send them down to the courts because they can, get the file and
So
whatever.
they just walk in. They just walk up and walk.
Oh yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, what I do see a lot is if on like a domestic violence case, sometimes we get a victim coming, a week
She wants
later.
to drop the charges.
Yes, and at that point, we just have to say, what charges have been filed. You'll be subpoenaed for the pre-trial, and you can kind of say your piece. But at this point, I think a lot of people are confused, and they think that because they are the victim, they think the case is against them. They think they're a party to the case. But it's the state of Ohio versus.
Right. It's not a civil case.
And it's not really at that point up to them to drop the charges. And there's some frustration from people sometimes, and Pam's really good about explaining that process to them. And usually, once they realize that they'll be able to come for the pre-trial and kind of say their piece, they'll be okay with it. But it causes a lot of problems sometimes, because then usually there's a protection order in place and they're not allowed to have contact, and so a lot of people get confused about that. And that's probably what I would say most people pop into our office about, is wanting to drop charges or wanting to know.
So when there is a pre-trial, does the case usually drop then because the victim won't cooperate? Or is it enough if the police officer sees her battered and bloodied and he admits something?
It really will depend on what kind of evidence they have. Usually we can work out some sort of plea agreement. I really don't ever just flat out dismiss a case like that. Particularly if the injuries are really bad and I have other witnesses, then I don't really...
Don't need her.
Not that I don't need her, but I try to reason
what?
with her, and because it's an emotional crime that happens, and there's a lot of roller coaster of emotions going on, and I try to work with the victim and explain to them, and if they won't cooperate though, if I don't need them to, then I don't, I'm not going to just drop it just because, especially if there's really bad physical injuries.
I showed a video earlier this week they had the walk against violence at Kent State Wednesday night, I think it was. And so I showed the video from the year before, and County Prosecutor Nick Irochi is on there talking about it, and he says that on Monday morning he would go by and there would be all of these guys that were being charged with domestic violence, and their girlfriends would be there holding onto their arm, and it's just, they must have no self-worth or what?
I don't know. I've never been in that situation, so I don't know, but it's tough for them, and I try to sit down and talk to them, and like I said, we can usually work out a resolution, but I don't tend to just drop charges like that.
The message that has to be sent out is that kind of conduct or behavior is not acceptable.
No.
And to simply dismiss it because the victim it undermines that message. We're trying to protect women or children or other victims of domestic violence, and the person committing that needs to know that it's not acceptable behavior, that he or she will get prosecuted for that, and that we'll try to work it out the first time. The second time there's going to be a stiffer penalty, and the third time they're going to go to jail. It's just not socially accepted behavior.
I want to say it's maybe the second time it's a felony.
Yeah.
I've sent domestic violence is over to the county, because especially if it's the same victim over and over again, and I'm not going to tolerate that.
Do you ever think, like, there was Debbie McHenry in Ashtabula, domestic violence, and her husband stabs her to death, or that Mandy Gottschalk in Ashtabula was at a bar in Geneva on the Lake, and she talks to some guy, so her boyfriend beats her to death when she gets home? I mean, if you ever in your mind think, if I dismiss this case and something like that happens to that victim,
right?
I'm gonna be.
I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I mean,
Yeah.
right? Those are one of the tougher types of cases that we get, because you get a lot of pushback from the victim sometimes, a lot, and you got to try to explain to them and reason. It's almost like you feel like you're a guidance counselor at that point, and prosecuting at the same time. And they said they often get confused that they're not really a party at that point, and it's kind of out of their hands. Once a police report's filed, I mean, we're going to run with it, and we're not going to just let that be taken lightly. So.
That's right.
There's a lot of other things that the law director's office gets involved with, like, it's like disputes with landlords and that kind of stuff. Do you guys get into that at all? No?
No.
That's a civil.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay. Because it seems like I remember seeing years ago, like, material and stuff about your landlords and that kind of stuff. How about, like, there's been a push on for building codes and stuff. Do you get into that some?
Oh yeah.
Oh yes. Those are some of the most interesting cases, I will say. Yes, we do. We do the code enforcement.
Okay, you say it's one of the most interesting
interesting.
cases, and then you be
It
quiet.
is.
So let's tell us about it.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, people feel strongly about they want to be able to do with their property and their homes what they want to. And when they get cited for a code enforcement violation from the zoning or housing department, they tend to get very defensive and upset about it. And we try to work with them as best as we can before we take it to a criminal level and file criminal charges. But sometimes we just get a lot of pushback from people that don't want to remedy the code violations. And at that point, we just have to take them to court. And even then, we still give them, I mean, geez, the first pre-trial, then there's usually a second pre-trial. I mean, they have a couple months to try to fix it. And there's a lot of pushback, surprisingly. There really is.
And they don't try to do anything in the meantime?
Some do,
It depends.
some don't.
Some feel very strongly about it, yeah.
How are they found, the code enforcement violations? Do the police go there for something else, or is it a tenant thing, or?
It kind of is a lot of different
Sometimes
ways.
it's complaint driven.
Yeah.
Sometimes the police may get involved in something. Sometimes there's the health department out there,
Right.
and that's an issue.
Children involved?
Sometimes there's children involved. Sometimes CSB is involved. I mean, it can
What's
come
CSB?
to our children's services.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So there's a wide variety of ways that can come to our attention.
Okay.
And for the most part, like Ali said, I mean, we're not out to bang people as criminals and this type of stuff. Before anything is done, we try to give them time to remedy the situation. Notices are sent out. If there's a landlord, the landlord and the tenant are both notified so that they have an opportunity to try to take care of the issue. And then only as a last resort we file the charge. But what changed and what we're emphatic upon is that once we have to file the charge, we're not going to dismiss it once they clean it up.
Right.
They
Okay.
put us through enough grief, enough hassle. We've got more important things to do, so if they're going to make us do this, then they're going to go to court, they're going to get a guilty plea, or they're going to be found guilty, and they're going to get a fine. And-
Usually if they fix it, though, the fine's considerably less.
Yes.
I mean,
Can you get a jail term for that?
technically it's
Yeah.
a jailable offense. I haven't seen anyone.
Right.
In certain more serious cases, the judges suspended jail time, which basically means they don't have to go to jail as long as by a certain day they've fixed the violations. But I haven't seen anyone have to actually go to jail on it. But
And this isn't stuff like your kitchen looks too much the 70s or anything.
no,
right?
no, it's, I mean,
I mean, this is garbage.
the dilapidated houses.
The house on North Liberty Street.
Oh,
was
yes.
pretty intense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ken Vaughn's house.
Things of that nature. I mean, there's so many demands being placed on our office and on the administrative part of the city that we don't have the resources and the manpower and the time to address every one of those.
Right.
So what we need to really focus on are things like, the meth houses, and we have follow-ups that need done for these houses that meth production was involved in, because we can throw people out, we can remediate, and we can actually tear down the house at some point if necessary. One of the other big issues is sanitation issues, whether it's sewer issues or garbage with rats running around, and that's a high priority. But there's a number of these things, health issues, sanitation, things where there's a public or safety risk are the things that we're really focusing on. Because that affects everybody. It affects our quality of life, it affects property values, and it affects how people view our community when we come in.
How does, you're talking about the North Liberties, I imagine that is an absentee landlord now. Or,
I don't want to go too much into it because
Well, I'm just-
stuff is
yeah.
still pending on that.
right, yeah, I don't want
Um,
specifically that, but there's got to be a lot of them where you have absentee landlords.
Sure. I mean,
So
that's-
how does that complicate things? You mean, do you fly to San Diego and you give them
You have to track them down. The
track
police
them down, or
department
we can
would.
do a publication.
Right, yeah, we can do
We
that.
can do publication. I mean, we have criminal remedies, we have civil remedies, and I think that's one of the things we're looking at on some of these, is rather than going through municipal court where we can get a conviction, we can get a fine, but we can't get an order forcing them to repair or to clean up the property or to demolish the building. Instead, we can take it through common pleas court, and we can get the court order to say, yes, you're going to have to do that, and if you don't, you're going to be in contempt. And the city can then go ahead and take care of the problem and assess the cost of the landowner. that's kind of where we're trying to move this toward, because the common pleas level gives us more flexibility than what the the local municipal court can do.
Are you talking mostly about private homes, or are you talking about public buildings too?
We're talking about private homes, we're talking about commercial buildings. If there's something that has to be demolished because we think it's a safety hazard, we're trying to put in place the procedures and the mechanism where we can bypass the municipal court, which can only fine.
Right.
But by law, the municipal court can only fine or impose a jail sentence. And for some people that's enough, but it doesn't get the job done sometimes.
It's cheaper just to pay the fine and
So-
just leave the problem.
So it's better sometimes to go into common pleas court, and now you're in the big boy court, and there's real penalties, and there's real cost, and it's more effective. And we're planning on doing that with a couple of these right now.
What about the Kmart building? You do anything with that?
We haven't seen any complaints on the Kmart building.
Okay, I was just wondering because there was a leaky roof and they had to, wasn't safe for people to be in there, so they closed the building, and I don't imagine it's getting any better.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll come down the road at some point.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
right now, it's just trying to get the stuff in order so we can go after some of the ones that have been, some of these nuisances, these public nuisances that have been around for a long time.
There was, I know, off and on discussion about better laws as far as landlord tenant and the homes or apartments are inspected, I don't know, yearly or something like that with the fee. Do you know, is there anything like that in Conneaut? Or I know there was a lot
Conneaut
of
has a couple of ordinances, and we're actually going through a review process to see how we can strengthen them. One is an occupancy permit that requires an occupant to pass an inspection, and typically it's things like hot and cold running water, a toilet system that works, things that are pretty common.
I think we got all that at our house.
Well, that's good. Then we won't be bothering you this week.
Don't come knocking on my door. Now the 70s kitchen thing, I don't know.
Yeah. We also have a vacant building ordinance, which requires anyone with a vacant building to register that with the city, and then to have annual inspections. And then there's an actual escalating annual fee that goes up each year after the first year for building, as long as it does remain vacant.
So that's a reason.
We have the
for
meth
them
houses.
to get
So-
it occupied.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the key things here, is trying to get everybody kind of coordinated. Because you've got the people there's two people in the planning and zoning office that do some of this. There's a fire chief over here that does some of it. There's the health department that does some of
Right.
it. There's the police department that does some of it. And part of what we're trying to do is get everybody together so we're all on the same page. We're one town, one team, and it's something that we need to kind of coordinate better with.
Right.
And part of that is hampered by, the neglect of the technology that we need to make that work. I think that's something that Jim is doing very well right now, is he's getting some new fiber optics in the building so offices can communicate with each
That
other.
would be good, yeah.
Well, in our office,
Oh,
where
important.
Pam sits and where we sit, there were two computers. They were on different networks. They could not share files between them.
I think you were telling me about that when I was in your office.
And,
2 weeks ago.
and it's incredible. And then, people complain about code enforcement, but you have two people in the code enforcement office. One of them has a computer that's hooked up to the internet. The other one has a computer that's not hooked up to the internet.
Wow.
Not hooked up to a printer.
Oh my gosh.
And they can't share files. And,
You got
and
thumb
so-
drives.
Yeah, floppy disks.
No, you
Yeah.
can't remember floppy
That's,
disks.
that's
I do.
pretty antiquated. So I think, Jim is tackling an awful lot in the first 6 months or so that he's been.
Yeah,
I think he's doing a phenomenal job with it. But these are some of the things that we have to address before we can get to other parts. You got to lay the foundation. And when you have computer systems and servers and things like that can't. In fact, one time
Here we go.
This can't be too long because we have to take one more break before
All right.
we go. So
just briefly, I tried to print something to our office printer, and it didn't print.
Oh, I
And
know
Pam
this story.
said, I think it may have gone over to the court. So we walked over to the court, and no, we haven't seen it. And about that time, John Williams comes down from the other side of the building and says, "Did you just print this?" So that's kind of the networking issues that Jim is trying to deal with. And I think, given a little bit of time, I think it'll come out fine. But it's those types of things that we need to improve upon to make the code enforcement better, to make the city a better place. Give the people that you have working with you
The tools.
the tools
Yeah.
to do their job. And I think Jim is very focused on that.
We got to take a break and we'll be back to finish these up. But before that, I want to leave just right now, before we go to the commercial, a little thought. I got my first computer with a floppy disk, and she was 3 years old. We'll be back. That's right. The time goes by when you're having fun. So you're going back to the office in Conneaut,
Yes.
and you're going to the office in Jefferson.
Well, I'll have to go to Conneaut first.
Okay.
But there's only one desk in there, so what do you do?
We have two
Oh, are there
desks
two
now.
desks?
Oh,
We
what?
put Kyle off in the corner, kind of. And then
All right.
You can follow Martha. Well, if Martha was going
No, I have
back.
to go to the chamber.
Okay. Yeah, because Martha's office is just
It's right
not
next
too-
door.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I look out and
You're in
see
the
you
bank,
guys.
aren't you?
Yes, at
Yeah.
the Huntington Bank in
Yeah.
Jefferson,
I used to go in there once in a while.
right next door.
Right next door.
I told them that they had a lot more of the pens out than Conneaut Bank did at the time. You know those pens? Oh, there's got to be some here.
oh yeah.
Yeah, they're everywhere. But anyway, I don't know if we have enough time to ask any more questions, so anything you guys want to say and risk being cut off before we go off the air?
Sure, just real quickly, Allie and I are both excited to be back in Conneaut. It's exciting to be working with Jim Hockaday and John Williams and the people on council. I think we have a great opportunity to make some strides, great strides in the next 5 years. I'm looking forward to working with everybody on that, and I think together we can do it.
Excellent. All right, thank you very much. We have Kyle Smith, Ellie Heinonen. They're the law directors, and we have Martha Sorohan from the Courier. She's not a law director, but she's got a rubber band around her camera. Thanks for being with us. We will be back Monday, which is Columbus Day. City Hall closed on Monday?
Yes,
Yes.
they are.
Okay, don't go to City Hall Monday. Your tip of the day.